What's up, Snappers? I'm Cydler, and this is Size Matters. This edition is a big one. Marvel Snap's late game card acquisition system. Why, I thought it was already great and didn't need to be changed. That's right, baby, my first at bat, I'm coming out swinging. And that's what you can expect from me. Hot takes to entertain, educate, and enrage. We're going to talk series drops, the nature of collectible card games. We'll ask the question, is Marvel Snap a pay-to-win game? And finally, we'll address the recent changes to the card acquisition system, where it went wrong, and why we, the community, are largely to blame.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature, and you will atone.
When Second Dinner announced their plans to release a new card every week, I was nervous. I only saw two possible outcomes. Either they make new cards easy enough to earn, that most players always have a full collection, or hard enough to earn, that some players fall further and further behind, and Marvel Snap truly becomes a pay-to-win game. So what's wrong with letting players have a full collection? People want to be able to play with new cards right away, and that's understandable. You're supposed to want things you don't have. That's the very nature of collectible card games. Wanting things is part of the fun. And when you get something you want, it's satisfying. And having all the cards would be very satisfying. But hear me out. In collectible card games, the developers don't want to fully satisfy their player base. Satisfied players will stop playing. It's Second Dinner's job to keep their player base engaged and always wanting more. Right now you're thinking, but they can do that with variants and cosmetics. And I'm sure that's true for you. You, like me, are deeply invested in Marvel Snap. But many people don't care about variants, and they would lose interest in the game without something to work for. It can't be as simple as Second Dinner just doesn't realize that we'd all be better off if everyone had every card. These are people who have a mastery of game theory, and we need to accept that they might know something that we don't. So you need to ask yourself, am I telling Henry Ford that he should add cup holders? Or am I telling Vincent van Gogh that he should add a puppy? I don't understand why he won't add a puppy. Everyone is asking for more puppies. People love puppies. So, Second Dinner didn't make it easy or even feasible for most people to have a full collection. But they also avoided the mistake of letting people fall farther and farther behind. The genius of consistent series drops is that no one falls behind and no one pulls farther ahead. We as a community didn't realize how good we had it. Each season, 4 or 5 new cards were released, and everyone, as long as they had consistent spending habits and were completing their missions, would receive 4 or 5 cards. The biggest spenders, the whales, would get the newest cards. But even if you never spent a single token, you'd still be getting the same number of cards. They were the cards that were released a few months ago that are now dropping down into Series 3. And of course, the vast majority of players fell somewhere in the middle. They're buying the season pass or picking up an occasional one out of the store, but they're not actually speeding up their progression. Each new card you got was a card you wouldn't open later for free in a reserve. We'll use this waterfall as an example, and it's pretty accurate. The water at the top is the new cards being released into Series 5, and that's where the whales live. At the bottom, you've got the cards entering Pool 3, and that's where the fish are swimming around. And most people are somewhere in the middle. No matter where players are here, they're all receiving the same amount of water. When you spend more money, you do get more cards, but you also move up. And you have to stay in line with that tier to continue receiving the same number of cards that everyone else is. If you slow down your spending habit, you fall back down and receive fewer cards. So the only way to get more than the number of cards that are being released each season is to continue spending more and more money. And it's just not feasible. Eventually you'll end up at the top getting the same 1 card per week as everyone else. And I feel like this is a mistake a lot of people make. If Second Dinner were to drastically reduce the price of cards or give us far more tokens, we're still not getting more cards each week. We're just getting newer ones. So as long as the number of cards being released was consistent, and the number of cards being dropped down into Series 3 was consistent, if a player's spending habit was consistent, they received the same number of cards. And that is what I loved about Marvel Snap's card acquisition system. But I kept hearing that Marvel Snap was too expensive. Too expensive for what? I think what people meant is that it's too expensive to get everything you want. But that's just it. You're not supposed to get everything you want. Too expensive for who? I suspect that most of the people complaining that the game was too expensive were the ones that were spending a lot of money. And I'll admit I'm one of them. I spent a lot on Snap. I don't consider myself a whale, but I'm sure there are some people that would. And I also have a free-to-play account. And you know what? The game is still amazing. So, I have a hard time accepting that such a fantastic free game is somehow also too expensive. I hear exasperated players questioning why Second Dinner isn't trying to make more money by selling more at a more reasonable price, while also accusing Second Dinner of being greedy for charging so much. The answer is simple. They don't want the majority of their player base to be able to buy their way to a full collection. Sure, if whales are willing to pay the exorbitant prices, they'll gladly take the money. Why wouldn't they? I want them to be successful too. It's better for all of us. Let the whales foot the bill for the free-to-play players. Why don't they put more credits and gold into season caches? Why do they cap how many boosters you can earn in a day? Why do they limit how many credits you can get by playing? Because they don't want to incentivize grinding. Why is buying cards so expensive? Well, the first one each season is free. The second one will cost $10 with the season pass. The third one is reasonably priced, and the fourth and fifth get exponentially more expensive. Second Dinner is trying to strike a very careful balance and make the game appealing to all players. It's an incredibly difficult task, and they're never going to do it perfectly. And of course, they're not going to please all the people all of the time. But I don't think they get enough credit for how great of a job they're doing. Now we get to the big question. Is Marvel Snap a pay-to-win game? Absolutely not. When people throw around phrases like pay-to-win game, it conjures the image of predatory mobile apps with literal paywalls. And in Marvel Snap, free-to-play players can compete at the highest level. Keep up with your missions. Spend your gold on Token Tuesdays and other high-value bundles, and you earn enough tokens for one free Series 5 card every month, with tokens to spare. I keep hearing complaints about people not being able to buy a card they want. Then you must have bought a different card that you wanted more. If a card looks strong, then pin it, and wait for the results to come in before committing to the purchase. Save up 6,000 tokens to have in reserve, just in case you absolutely do need a card. Of course, broken cards will sneak through from time to time, mistakes happen, but if Second Dinner is successful in balancing cards, there won't be a must-have card released during most seasons. Free-to-play players that have been Series 3 complete for some time won't be able to build every deck, but they will certainly be able to build several top-tier meta decks. On my free-to-play account, I've made Infinite for the last 3 seasons. And it's not because I'm such a great player. I'm a good player, but I'm not great. The amount of time I play, I'd call enfranchised casual, and my wife would call degenerate addict. Now, of course, we do need to discuss the big bads. The cards that are permanently in Series 5. They can disrupt this whole paradigm, right? Well, sort of, but not exactly. Even if there was one released every month, free-to-play players would still be able to buy them. In fact, you sort of have to. But it's at the expense of getting another card that you do get to choose. And I do think they're coming out too frequently, and I hope that frequency comes down. But I'll say this in their defense, it gives us a variety of experiences. When High Evolutionary came out, he completely dominated the meta. And he's very strong, but I don't think that's the reason that he was everywhere. It's because he's staying in Series 5 indefinitely. So everyone bought him and everyone wanted to play with him. And I, for one, wouldn't want that to happen every week. And that's what would happen if everyone had full collections. Less diversity and an overall worse play experience. But it's like when Season Pass cards come out and they're running around everywhere. It's a fun change of pace. But free-to-play players are on the outside looking in. Big bads give them a chance to experience that too. The rest of the time, everyone chooses one of the new cards, which gives us the unique experience of having a card that very few other people do. Boom! Stegron! Bet you didn't see that coming! So, if the free-to-play players aren't the ones being the most negatively impacted by this system, who is? Whales and content creators. Whales are paying a lot of money to have early access to cards that everyone will get for free. content creators do need access to new cards right away to make content with them. That's where you need every card to stay competitive. Not in the game, but in the content arena. Now finally, the stage is set to talk about the recent changes to the card acquisition system, what went wrong and why. There was growing resentment in the vocal community. Content creators were understandably frustrated that they didn't have access to the cards they need to make content. Some of the most competitive players were frustrated they didn't have access to new cards they need to playtest and push the meta. And these are by far the loudest voices in the community. And so the negativity spread, like it usually does. Intentionally or unintentionally, content creators were telling people not to play the game. And Second Dinner made a mistake I have seen so many times before. They tried to give the players what they thought they wanted, without really giving them what they were asking for. They introduced flexible series releases and flexible series drops. The community was asking for cards to be released directly into Series 4. But what they really meant was make the whole system cheaper, so I can get the cards I want right away. And the response was overwhelmingly negative. People were dumbfounded that Second Dinner was giving with one hand while taking away with the other. But of course they were. They don't want the majority of players to have full collections. And they never will. And Second Dinner really mishandled the announcement. They completely pulled the rug out from people that were waiting to receive Darkhawk and Null. Full disclosure, I was one of those people. After I got through Zabu Winter, I swore I'd never get caught without 6,000 tokens again, and I'd never pay a single token for Darkhawk. And after going without through several Darkhawk-dominated metas, he was pulled away, and it felt terrible. And to make it worse, they waited until an hour after the patch went live to make the announcement. It should have been announced weeks ago, and clearly it was meant to be announced back on May 5th when High Evolutionary was announced to be a big bad. The timing was unfortunate, but the text of the announcement wasn't great either. It talks about extreme cases, like holding cards back indefinitely, cards dropping all the way from Series 5 to 3, and going entire seasons without any series drops. But it doesn't clarify what their plans really are. Having flexible series drops does fix a real problem with the old model. Players picking one card per season doesn't work when all the cards released in a season are designed to synergize together, something we're going to see next season with the Spider-Man cards with move synergy. And Second Dinner having the ability to release some of those cards into Series 4 can fix that, but unfortunately the announcement doesn't mention that. And I do think they have good intentions. Second Dinner is trying to take more direct control over the speed at which players receive new cards, and also encourage people to stop hoarding their tokens. I know I have. But in a way that means taking agency away from the players, and turned what should have been a positive announcement with some really great news into a feel-bad moment, with a lot of unanswered questions. But worst of all, it's a big blow to the framework that ensured that all players received cards at an equal rate. And we don't really know what impact this will have. Time will tell. If you take anything away from this edition of Size Matters, let it be this. Getting everything you want isn't what you really want. Focus on the good in what you've been given. If you have a voice in the community, don't be afraid to give criticism, but be sure to focus on the positive. And be careful what you ask for. You might just get it. You'll see me next time on Size Matters.